The first episode, we saw how Batty's story began when he awoke from a minor surgery, alone, naked and afraid, far from his known world. He found food and shelter in that strange deserted valley. Deserted as far as humans were concerned, there were numerous animals small and large, and a threatening colony of genetically modified monster insects in a cave. Batty was beginning to carve out a temporary home in these surroundings when some seemingly small and bizarre thing had become his first serious threat. A squirrel, driven mad by some unknown force, was out for his blood. After making some rudimentary weapons, he chose a club, steeled himself for violence, and left the cave. Batty and the squirrel ran at each other. There was a blur of motion. The squirrel lay dead under the weight of Batty's club. He stood stock still in surprise. He had to check himself twice before it sunk in. He'd escaped without a scratch. Recovering his wits, he butchered the small animal, leaving a small pelt which would cover nothing, but maybe if he added to it, could be made into some simple clothing. He also checked the meat carefully. It appeared the animal was healthy in body if not in mind, so he used the meat in a simple meal, cooking it with berries on his campfire. Exhausted emotionally, Batty slept. The next day he made plans to create himself some clothing. The squirrel skin was obviously completely inadequate. He'd need plenty more small animals. He had to learn to hunt. He would have to start with animals that wouldn't do him too much damage if they fought back. He chose a turkey. His aim with the small bow was awful, but finally he hit it enough times to kill it. Man the hunter, ha! He felt that he couldn't live in the cave exclusively. Though it was safe from outside predators, the thought nagged at him that an insect infestation might one day appear, and it would be healthier to live in buildings nearby. He made a rough blueprint for the first wooden hut. For the next couple of days he hunted some hares and one rat, though the idea of eating rat meat revolted him. If he was improving at all, it was almost imperceptible. Suddenly another threat appeared, and this one was so serious that it made the squirrel attack look laughable. He was being raided. A pirate woman named Red Barrow, good at melee and holding a heavy club, had entered the area and was watching from a distance, preparing to attack. She arrived in the northeast. There was no chance that she would get tempted into the insect cave, which was in the northwest. Nervously, Batty got on with everyday tasks, but not for long. Red Barrow was beginning her attack. Batty went on to the alert, his bow in his hand. He had to hope he had improved his shooting skills just a little. He felt his best tactics were to try to shoot at her across difficult ground so she wouldn't be able to close in on him. If she got within club range, he'd be dead. There was a small lake, no more than a patch of water, but with broad mud flats all around it. This would have to be the battlefield. Batty headed for it. When he saw Red Barrow from a distance, he could see she was going to miss both him and the lake. She was heading directly for his cave. He had to move nearer her to act as a decoy to lure her across into the muddy flats. At the same moment, a possible distraction appeared. A group of travellers were passing through the valley but were some distance from the action. They might not see either Batty or Barrow. In fact, they were very near the insect cave and might get into a fight with them. Barrow saw Batty and headed for him. Batty stood his ground, shot once and missed, then shot again. This time she was hit, but was now dangerously close as he turned to back off towards the lake. Luckily, Batty was moving the quicker of the pair. Perhaps the shot he had landed was making a crucial difference. Batty reached the mud and crossed the lake. She followed. On the far bank, he turned and fired, hitting her a second time. Determined not to let her get too close, he turned and backed off again to the edge of a rocky hill. As she approached, he shot once, well wide. Then again, a direct hit, and she was downed. Checking her, it was clear that she was already very sick with plague, but the 3 arrows had cut her in the body, arm and leg, with the leg wound being particularly deep, cracking her femur. Batty thought hard about whether to treat her. All his instincts as a paramedic said it was right to do so, but he couldn't risk also falling victim to the plague she was carrying, and after all, she had intended to kill him. How much mercy did she deserve? He continued hunting hare, thanking his lucky stars he hadn't yet suffered any injuries. Soon he would have enough animal hide to try making himself some clothing, a simple wrap. After all the combat the previous day, Batty slept in almost until midday. He started some serious work on the wooden hut outside his cave. He wasn't yet sure what he would use it for, but it was a good feeling to be indulging his passion for construction. The rice harvest had started to come in too. Mealtimes were greatly improved compared to only a few days earlier. Now he was eating cooked hare with rice and berries. While hunting more hare, Batty passed Red Barrow's body. She had evidently bled out and succumbed to her wounds. Batty didn't enjoy mining, but he needed some compacted steel he'd found in the walls of his cave. He needed to progress from the Stone Age to the Iron Age. While hunting a hare, Batty made an unnerving discovery. The mountainside he was passing was actually a long man-made wall. It gave him an eerie feeling, like there was some vague ancient danger here. Later, more hare became victim to his bow and arrows. After one kill, he realised he had enough to make the simple tribal wrap he had planned to protect his body from the elements. The weather was warm right now, but that wouldn't last. More rice crops came in. He could hardly believe his farming efforts were working out. He made plans for a small wood-burning electricity generator, but he would require more than just steel. This would need some of those old machine components he had seen embedded in the rubble of some old buildings. As he slept, he could reflect on how his skills were improving, and now he had clothing at last. What would be his next focus? Would he ever meet anyone else? And how could he maybe one day escape back to civilization?